Hi there, and welcome to Let's Slow Down, a podcast for all of you who feel tired and stressed from this overwhelming world. Here we'll have fun, inspiring conversations about living life on our own terms and explore ways to ease the pace of our modern world, because life really is good when you're relaxed enough to be present for it. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Stolting, and I welcome you to this space where I hope to inspire you to slow down, because life is too short to let it go by in a blur. So take a deep breath, relax, and enjoy the show. I am so excited to talk to Scott Lancaster today. He has graciously agreed to come on the podcast and talk about everything youth sports related, which is, I know it's a hot topic in my house, and I know a lot of you listening have school-age children that are young athletes that play in a lot of organized sports. And as much as we talk about slowing down on this podcast and try to bring that theme to light, an area that can be really tricky is the sports schedules and the kids' schedules, and running them around and trying to get to be a supportive parent, get them to everything, and maintain healthy balance at home. So Scott co-authored a book called Beyond Winning: Smart Parenting in a Toxic Sports Environment, among many other things that he has contributed to the youth sports world. And first of all, welcome, Scott. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I'm happy to talk about. This is a topic that I'm faced with every day. So not something from all different aspects of life. So whether it's as a coach or as a person that counsels, or as a parent who has kids that are past this age of sports and participation. So in combination, I have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, and you've worn a lot of hats in this area, right? You've kind of been on all ends of it. So
yeah, from the pro level all the way down to the lowest grassroots level you could think of, which sometimes are the most fun.
Right.
But and then it's funny how that pro level rears its ugly head at the youth level a lot.
Mhm.
So the
Yes.
similarities and what happens is pretty drastic, but and alarming at the same time.
Agreed. That's how I feel. So hearing it come out of your mouth is a little bit very validating, I should say. You said, what troubles me most about today's youth sports culture is that children are not the primary focus. The fields and courts are overrun by self-absorbed coaches who live out fantasies of power and control at the expense of the kids that they coach. The adults get too caught up in the hype of winning games and championships when they should concentrate solely on training kids to master the fundamentals. I know you've spoken to hundreds of NCAA Division I college football and basketball coaches, and you said they all mention the stark decline in skill development in youth sports, and they're oftentimes forced to reteach these fundamentals. So why don't we start there with what you have to say about all that? We could probably
Okay.
start end there. I think and I feel
Yeah.
like that's enough to talk about.
Well, one of the things I am passionate about is learning the fundamentals of a sport. If you're going to be involved in a sport, learning how to properly play the sport so that you can actually have the tools to succeed are important. We glaze over them in the youth sports area. We rush to get them to games. So we never actually teach them the skills of how to play a game. So we'll throw a kid into being a shortstop because we feel that he or she has the physical tools or the physical makeup to do that, but they may never have been trained in how to, number one, move at a shortstop position, how to throw properly at a shortstop position, how to adapt to the skills that may and sort of progress you into the next level. Because let's face it, every kid that plays sports wants to get better. That's the secret sauce, getting better. But if you don't focus on fundamental skills, you'll never get better. And in today's youth sports environment, and even at the high school level, you're seeing kids come totally unprepared, or there's the other side of it, over prepared, and they're robots.
Mm-hmm.
They wait for you to tell them what to do. And as a high school coach and at higher levels, it drives me crazy that I have athletes that can't think for themselves, and they wait for me to tell them what to do.
Sure.
And it scares me and it worries me as a coach, because when I put you out in the field, I cannot be there telling you what to do all the time. I don't want to be that's not the type of coach that I am. I want to be the type of coach that guides you and prepares you. And then you go out and then you use that knowledge, you practice that knowledge and you use that knowledge and then you flourish from there. You make mistakes. I want you to make mistakes. We celebrate mistakes. And I want you to understand that life is full of mistakes. And if you don't understand that, then you're gonna run into trouble. So as a coach, I'm trying to develop them as a person, number one, trying to sort of your second parent, as you have them. It's scary how much you're in front of them.
Oh yeah.
A lot of times I'm in front of a child or a youngster or adolescent more than their parents are.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got to approach it that way, and you have to sort of guide them and nurture them through the sport, and also respecting that they have parents and that you've got to sort of team up in that aspect, which isn't always possible, but you have to, as long as you're aware of where your place is within that continuum, I think you can have a lot of success. Going back to the fundamentals, this rush to play games drives me crazy. The club sport environment, which I'm in. For full disclosure, I'm involved in club sports. I coach 3 elite soccer teams, boys teams. It's tough. It's tough for the coaches to have the time to put against a lot of the stuff, because as I've experienced, a lot of these kids come unprepared and not skillful, or they have the skills, but they don't know how to use them, or they come to me and they're good at their sport and their skill, but they couldn't move to save their life. So we've missed a lot of opportunities to develop the full athlete. And it all goes back down to, and it's always foundational. If you start at a young age, teach them the basics of how to move and kinetically how to actually develop and develop from there, you'll produce a better prepared athlete to play a sport. I'll give you an example. Running. Okay. I'm a speed coach. So everybody's like, what's a speed coach? Well, I said, I've never met anybody who wants to get slower, right?
Exactly.
I teach athletes how to get faster, and speed is the essence of sport. The faster you are, the faster you can do something, the better you can use your skills more efficiently and effectively. Yet, and this goes to what we're talking about today, slowing down your skills and your movements and learning how to do that actually helps you become faster. And so it's like a push and a tug all the time with these kids. Mm-hmm. You have to show them how to slow down. And from a physical standpoint, I do as much teaching deceleration as I do acceleration. And that's for a number of reasons. Deceleration, the muscles that you use when you decelerate, which is so vital, and they're vital for safety, they're vital for performance. The muscles that you use to decelerate actually improve your speed because they build the muscles up for acceleration. And so there's all these little intricate little things going on within an athlete as you develop them that if you don't understand them, you miss a huge opportunity. And I get kids as young as 8 that want to become faster, which is fine. I think it's too young, but I think it's fine. But I also get them at 12, 13, 14, even 16 years old that I have to sort of break them down and start over again and show them and teach them the fundamentals of movement and the fundamentals of speed, because speed is made up of the components of skills. And already what I've said, people's heads are probably spinning because nobody thinks of that type of stuff. But as a professional in this area, working with professional athletes as well as youth athletes, you see it every day. And it's something that has been missing from the youth sports development, youth athletic development arena for a long, long time.
Sure. And I would imagine if you don't learn those fundamentals correctly, then the injuries that are going to occur are huge, right? I mean, if they're doing these things wrong for years and years, there's going to be some consequences there physically.
Yes. And emotionally as well.
Yep.
And those are just as important as the physical ones. One leads to the other.
Sure.
And vice versa. So yes, injury prevention is a large part of my training. It's actually all of my training because teaching kids and providing injury prevention helps develop a better athlete. It develops them the correct way. And the example I give to a lot of people, and a lot of this is for female athletes as well, because I train a lot of female athletes. I train members of the U.S. women's national soccer team. I've trained top collegiate lacrosse players and all the major schools. They're great athletes, but they all have a weakness, and the weakness is is in the back of their bodies. Okay. We overtrain the front of our bodies. So when you hear that a female athlete or even a male athlete, and I could go on for days on that too, but a female athlete being trained in a weight room scares the hell out of me, because 9 out of 10 times it's being done incorrectly. And that's not to paint with a broad brush. I mean, I know there are coaches and there are strength training experts that do it the correct way, but for the most part, most don't. And when we overload our thighs, and I'll give you a classic example: squats in the weight room are absolutely dangerous if they're not highly overobserved as well as corrected. You could get seriously hurt, or you overdevelop the front of your body, the thighs. What you should be doing is developing your glutes, your butt, basically, your lower back, your upper back, as well as in order to protect your knees. Because when you overdevelop in the front of the body, now you're vulnerable for a knee injury. And I've seen it so many times where, especially female athletes, will blow out their ACL, and it's not contact, it's just by movement. And so it's in the weight room, learning how to strengthen the correct parts of your body, but also how to move correctly. Because a lot of this happens because they don't know how to move. They don't know how to decelerate. They don't know how to change direction correctly. They don't understand the balance. They don't understand sort of a body alignment and how to keep themselves in a safe position. So all these things go into it. And yes, injury prevention is the key to, I think, all training. And if coaches were to sort of approach it that way, they'd have a lot more success. I think the majority of coaches feel it's a waste of time, waste of their time, because they'd rather teach strategic and X's and O's rather than develop the athlete the appropriate way so they can perform for them. So that's a huge issue. And if more coaches would do that, they'd have a lot more success.
Right. Makes sense, right? And I think that goes for everything. That goes for life. Like if we just focus on the basics, everything else will fall into place. With our society rushing and pushing and trying to do as much as possible, sometimes we really miss the mark because these fundamentals, all these simple things are just lost. And
Yeah.
there's so much to gain from them. So
The way we bring up kids too, we rush
yeah,
them to do
yeah,
things, to get somewhere, to achieve something. And we forget that there's fundamentals behind that. And that causes sort of a ripple effect. As they grow up, they imitate that. And so they never really learn the importance of slowing down, the importance of fundamental development, and that if you slow down now, you're going to be so much faster in the future.
yeah,
And
yeah, and more
that
efficient.
needs more, absolutely efficient. And so it all these things play into each other, but it all starts with the fundamentals.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people listening are probably, shaking their head, agreeing like this makes perfect sense. What I have found that it never ceases to baffle me is just that we are pushing these kids. It's like we forget that they're kids, but we get these schedules. And all of a sudden, I have an elementary age child,
Hmm.
little girl, and then I have a middle school boy, and I have a freshman in high school daughter. And they all play sports. So now they all play spring sports. Everything's starting up. As soon as that snow
Yeah.
melts, we're starting. And the schedules are insane. I mean, we're looking at 6 days a week. By high school, okay, I guess, I don't know, maybe that's what's to be expected, but it's a lot. It's really a lot. And even at the middle school level, it's intense. So, what do you have to say about that? And what do we do as parents like that are feeling like, well, my kid is really loving this sport, getting a lot out of it, but I feel like it's a little too much. But then if we say no, then they completely miss out. So it's like, how do you find the common ground? What do you recommend to us parents that are feeling kind of pulled in both directions and not sure how to approach this?
Well, first of all, I think parents should always go with their gut. If they feel it's too much, then it is too much.
Mhm.
Have a conversation with your child, usually, just off the cuff. Doesn't have to be focused, because I know kids hate that. They hate to be like put
Yeah.
in the witness
Hmm.
stand and have to answer questions. But it just comes up in just everyday conversation, and you can sort of tell by their moods and by their, energy levels when they've had enough or they're starting to wear on them. And I'm experiencing that with my high school boys teams right now in soccer. And they went from undefeated to almost unbeatable to now they've lost every game in the last few weekends. My co-coach and I are baffled by it, but I'm not. I mean, I have to play politics too. I have to, because I'm part of this club, I have to be as baffled as everybody else. But I know the real reason is that we've overworked these kids, and they've been overworked for maybe a year or two going into this. And then you have school, and now you have school activities, and now spring sports. You're playing 2 or 3 different sports, which I love, but I don't think they should be done in the same season. But all that adds up, and it becomes overwhelming. And so my co-coach and I are working on what we call load management. How much should we put in front of these kids or make these kids do at practice? Understanding what their leisure life is like. Not, that sounds funny because now when they come to us, what is that? Their professional life? No.
Right.
But we treat them like that is. But now we have to sort of lead them through when they come to us to get enough, as we say in soccer, touches on the ball, but also make it fun so they don't burn out mentally, but also don't run them into the ground and eliminate a lot of the fitness aspects of it, because I know they can't take it anymore. So it's something that every coach, I think, is faced with. I don't know if a lot of coaches don't even think to even do an assessment of load management. But if you do that, and that is, what are you doing at school? What are you doing after school? What other sports are you playing? And then take the hours that they're spending with you, and then watch them in games, and it has their performance sort of fallen off. We do something at the beginning of the season that I found very helpful. And as an athletic development coach, I swear by this, by doing a baseline test of skills of, say, a 20-yard dash or a change of direction shuttle run or a jumping drill or something like that, where we measure the results so that midway through the season, when we're having these conversations of load management, we go back to those tests. We have them do them over again. If there's a fall off, or we know that we've overworked them, so we have to pull way back. To get to your question, what to do as a parent. And I know it's tough. I know it's really tough, but you got to have the guts to stand up and say, enough is enough. I can't put my child through this. Can we readjust this? Or have them miss a practice and explain that it's unhealthy for them at this point. Yeah. And I know coaches hate to hear that. Yeah. I've been on that side of it, and especially when you're trying to accomplish something, but you have to have sort of the guts to be able to stand up and say that. Now, the other point of view on this is that, and I always say this, I use this phrase, kids should not play adult games. We not only rush them into sports too much too soon, but we also ask them to perform at a pro level. And what I mean by a pro level, of course, they never accomplished that at that age, but we want to see them perform like professional athletes or collegiate athletes. And we set up our little lawn chairs on the sidelines, and we expect to be entertained by our children and by other people's children to win a game that is totally meaningless, where they could get hurt, where they're wearing out, where kids should not play adult games. The games they should be playing should be readapted so that fundamentals are scored. And I'm always going back to the fundamentals, where we score the fundamentals and we do not look at the final score. The final score means nothing. And as a coach, I can tell you, we could perform at the highest level and make no mistakes during a game and lose. Mm-hmm. That's discouraging, right? So, but at the same time, you learn from that. And so I tell my kids, we never lose, we learn. We've learned today. Even when we win, we learn today. And how are we going to take that learning experience and advance it? And so it's really managing what your expectations are, which should be fairly low. Mm-hmm. And that allows for manageable, so that your kids can achieve, accomplishing things and achieving things, whether they're in small bits and pieces as you advance through a season, work a lot better than trying to gear up to win one game or one championship. Right. Because that's not what it's all about. We lose sight of that because we're so caught up in this culture of rushing.
Yes.
And this culture of wanting to be the best and wanting to outperform everybody. Why? I mean, everybody has their own taste. It doesn't mean I'd rather see you outperform somebody at 25 years old or 35 years old in their job rather than now at 15 years old. It makes no sense. So that, as a coach, that's what I'm preparing them for down the line, being successful in their future as healthy adults.
That's really important. And like you said, I mean, honestly, you can always find a conference or
a different division to put the team in where they're either going to crush everybody, right? We've all seen that where these teams come in and they're clearly not matched up equally. I don't even see how that's fun. And the kids aren't learning anything because the losing team is just defeated. The winning
Yeah.
team it's not even a challenge. So
Right.
nobody's getting anything out of that. And it's frustrating to watch
Oh,
when
they're
that
getting the
happens.
money out of your pocket. I'll
They
tell you
are,
that.
they are, and then they
That's what
can
they are accomplishing.
yeah, and they can
That's
tell
what
everybody
happens.
that they won every game and, they're
Yeah. Yeah.
undefeated, and it's like you're saying, that's really not what it is all about. And I think for these kids too, something that I'm noticing is that it becomes their identity, and I'm curious about your thoughts on this and how to really go about this in a healthy way. I feel like I'm sure you see it with all these different teams. Like the second they join the team, even before the team even starts, you're buying all the gear, right? All the shirts, all the sweatshirts, all the parents are putting the magnets on their car, and it becomes this label that they put on themselves. And I often think, well, what happens if that kid gets hurt? Or what happens if all of a sudden it doesn't work out? Then what are we kind of message are we sending to our kids? Like, well, you're a failure. Your worth was all in this team, and now it's gone or it didn't work out. I just feel like there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, you just hit the nail on the head. That's one of the more vital things that are wrong with youth sports. This identity that you're now identified either in a gang or a team, right?
Yep.
Or you're now us against them. Or if you're the star player, so much more pressure is put on that person. Or if you are at the lower rung of the ladder of trying to achieve things to get better, you're put on a lot of pressure because you want your peers. I hear it and I see it with athletes, how they put down their teammates that aren't achieving. And so a lot of that's up to coaching too, of how to manage that.
Mm,
But identity or self-doubt, let me go back to that.
mm. That's a big
Or
one.
let's get into self-doubt.
Yeah.
Coaches, and not all coaches, but many coaches, because they're not trained to see this. But coaches, youth coaches are the biggest producers of self-doubt in kids. And that's not to say teachers aren't either. I think teachers
Hmm.
do the same thing. If you do not teach correctly, if you don't coach correctly, you can destroy somebody
Yeah.
or seriously damage them in progressing later in life. And that's why we have these mental health issues. Sports
Hmm.
contributes a lot to mental health issues because if you're put down, if you're not built up, and I'm not saying baby them, I'm saying have them break it down for them so they have a pathway to succeed and know that there's off ramps. You can always leave this and do something else. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to go do choir rather than play soccer, all the good. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
But celebrate that, build them up with it, and don't you as a coach or a parent, obviously they look to you for approval and they look to you to guide them. And if you guide them and get disappointed, the worst thing you can say to an athlete, and I also use it as a tool, especially with female athletes
Hmm.
when they're misbehaving and they're not doing things correctly. Oh, my line is, "You're so disappointing me." And the whole team just goes, they lose all the color in their face. They hate to disappoint.
Right.
But at the same time, but it brings them back to the center of saying, come on, guys, get focused. If we're going to do this, don't fool around. Don't do this. But you got to be careful what you say to a kid,
Hmm.
but you also have to know how to build them back up almost immediately. Give them alternatives. If you're going to be negative, you better have a positive right behind it.
Right.
And we always say, whisper constructive criticism, yell encouragement. And that is something I think in the coaching world is not done enough. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but we are big producers of self-doubt, and that follows you the rest of your life. Believe
Yeah.
me, you reflect back on those experiences as minor as you may think they are in a game or during a season, but they come back up like nightmares later in life. And
Yep.
we have to realize that, and we have to manage that and go in and understand that we're dealing with kids that are delicate and emotionally, but also could be very, very strong if we handle it the right way.
Right.
And as you said, a lot of the coaches are volunteer. And so I'm a mom or a dad who works a full-time job, if not another one, in this day and age, everybody's busy,
Yeah.
right?
Everybody's spread thin.
So how do I expect you to have the expertise as a parent with my child to be able to develop them that way? And it's a tough situation. And I think that's why you've seen more sports go to club
Hmm.
where you get paid coaches,
Right.
but they better be prepared and they better be trained. And I don't think we prepare coaches that well to do that, or to see that and to see the signs of certain things. So what you're seeing in society today, all the bad things in society, you see it in sports.
Hmm.
And I see kids that come to practice that have cut themselves.
Wow.
That's scary. That's
Yeah.
sad, but you have to address it and you have to know
Yeah.
how to address it. And then then everything starts to become clearer to the coach. I think when you see all the other signs, how they interact with other kids and how they
Hmm.
get down on themselves. So the emotional part of it, the psychological part of sports has been downplayed, but it just is just as important as learning the fundamentals of the game. And, because if you don't have a solid emotional and psychological sort of foundation as well, then it could be pretty detrimental. So do I have all the answers? No, I'm learning as I go.
Sure.
Every coach should be learning as they go. You want to find a coach that is always and wanting to learn and ask questions, where the big points that alarm me when you see a coach is the ones that never ask a question.
Hmm.
The ones that are command driven coaches. You want to stay away from them because they're not learning, and you want them to learn something about your child all through a season, every time they're playing. So those are the great types of coaches that you want in front of your children. Otherwise, if they're just commanding and they never have the time to listen because they never think about it and never ask any questions, then you're going down a road that could be pretty disappointing.
Yeah, the pressure. I mean, just the pressure that these kids are under, even just academically alone and
Yeah.
socially, just going to school every day, there's so much there. Right. And
Yeah.
then I look at it as, especially, before high school level, sports should be a time to get some exercise, hopefully get some fresh air if it's an outdoor sport, see a bunch of friends, all of those things. And you're learning a sport, you're getting better at something, you're honing some skills. So there's a lot of benefits to sports. There's a ton of
Yeah.
benefits.
Hmm.
Of course, it can be a really healthy thing. But then when the thing that's supposed to be your outlet and your stress releaser, because sadly these, elementary, middle school kids actually have stress, it seems. When that becomes stressful, then it's like, now what?
Why?
This
Yeah.
right,
Why?
why? This is the thing they're supposed to be doing for fun. And I feel like actually that's a big thing for me. It's supposed to be fun, and everybody's just taking it so seriously, so young. We're missing the mark. Let it be fun. Everything should be fun. We should try to
Yes.
find, as adults, we should try to find jobs that are fun. We should try to everything doesn't have to be such a chore. So
Right. Well, I think it was Benjamin Franklin that said your vocation should be your vacation, or it may not have been Benjamin Franklin, may have been during that era. But it's such a classic quote because if
mhm,
you're not doing something that you enjoy going to, it becomes something that's fun to do. You can't wait to get to, then you shouldn't be doing it basically, or you should find something else to
yep,
help enhance that. But you're right. I go back to the quote. Kids should not be playing adult games. I think that's at the root of the
yes,
problem. I think we push them to play the adult game, which is not adapted for the proper development of a child. And if you can find other alternatives, that's why I am a big proponent. And beyond winning, we go into this
yes,
pretty much. It's about action sport athletes. And what do I mean by action sport athlete? I mean a skateboarder. I mean a surfer. I mean a mountain biker. Those types of athletes that don't have a team, that don't have a coach, but they enjoy what they do. I've learned so much from those athletes and I appreciate them so much because whether they realize it or not, they truly are part of the essence of what sports should be.
mm,
Go out, enjoy it, challenge yourself, work with a friend to get better, go to a half pipe and skateboarding and just do something over and over and over again. They do that and they don't get bored. They love it. They're
yeah,
laughing, having
yep,
fun, and there's no coach telling them what to do. And those are the type of athletes, and that's the type of sports that really, I think, really develop them both physically and emotionally and
yes,
psychologically. So bring my big chore, or what I try to do is bring that mentality, that philosophy, that methodology to team sports
hmm,
and try to create, quote unquote, a skate park type of mentality at practice. Okay. Now, it's tough to do in this hyper organized world of parents watching you and saying, what the hell are you doing? I want them
yeah,
to be practicing. I want them to be scrimmaging, which, we can get into scrimmaging is
right.
one of the worst things in the world, but it's the common thing. But See, kids in action sports don't scrimmage. They work on fundamentals and they work on getting better. And their scoreboard is, I progressed today. I got a little bit better today.
Mhm.
And if only youth sports could be the same thing and that coaches could realize that and actually point those things out, we'd be much better off.
So in your opinion, what age is like a healthy age to really get involved in true organized sports? Is there a certain age? Is it different for every kid? Like my little one just finished. She had a great experience. This was her first year. She's in 3rd grade, 8 years old. She just played rec basketball for the first time. And I have to say it was like one of the best hours of the whole week going to their little games. It was so
Yeah.
much fun. And
Yeah.
seeing the progression that they made in a couple of months. I mean, they, literally the first game, they did not know which basket to go to and they
Yes.
didn't know what to do. And then at their last game last night, I mean, they have come such a long way and they felt really good about their progress and it
Mhm.
really had very little to do with winning, losing. But they really started to develop as little basketball players. It was really fun. And they had one practice a week. It was very manageable. So the season finishes and my daughter's already like, "Oh, well, you know, they're saying maybe we should try out for travel if we like it and this and that." So she's only going to be going into 4th grade. And this was literally her first time ever playing basketball, beyond our driveway. So I don't know. I feel like this was a great experience. I'd love to see her just kind of keep it at this level for another year or two and just learn the game.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that? Like why do we jump into this travel club mentality so young?
Yeah. Travel sports have done more to ruin the experience for young athletes. And
And ruin
I won't,
families. It's like, how do you
and really,
do it?
well,
Never
it's
home.
exactly, exactly. Going back in the day where you just went out in your backyard and played pickup or went into your driveway and played pickup and we all survived. We all got better at what we did. Did we miss out on having these organized leagues and stuff? Yeah, yeah, but who cares? I mean,
Yeah,
at that point, we didn't care. We didn't know any better, right?
exactly.
So it's almost like, it's almost having the amnesia and saying, okay, that's not something, I really enjoy because there's a lot of negatives to it too. But to stay on the positive side, I think that it's become a business. Youth sports is such a business. And the way to extract money from your wallet is to have games and to have tournaments and to buy uniforms and to travel. And the more they can give you this feeling that we are improving your kid through quantity, not quality, that's what they're going to do
That's
because
how they're
quality
justifying it,
requires,
right?
yeah, the quality is something that is tough, right? You got to have some really good experts and coaches behind you, especially at that age, to really, you know, to advance a young athlete. However, you can do it through just free play and having fun as your daughter did this year. And it's probably limited instruction and it's probably just, which is fine at that age. I'm
Mhm.
not saying go totally into the fundamentals and be hardcore there. I'm saying that go back to a great age is around the age of 12, right as they're about to hit the teen ages, because they're going through puberty or they're about to go through puberty and teaching them all the basics and foundational skills of movement not only improves them as an athlete, because then they can take those, what you taught them into and out of the awkwardness of developing through puberty. That's a benefit to it,
Mhm.
but it also builds their confidence up. And building an athlete's confidence up is so important. And they understand it, they feel it, and they grow as a person, they grow as an athlete. If you can get them in front of a program or get them in a program that really wants to nurture them and not emphasize winning games and championships. And I know it sounds like utopia at times to parents are overwhelmed because that's all they have as an option. I, I understand that, but sometimes be careful what kind of program you put them in. Be careful what
Mhm.
kind of coach you put them in front of.
Mhm.
There's no if you pull them early and you see these warning signs, you talk to other parents and you hear the histories of these programs and coaches, and you hear something that raises a red flag, then you know that it's a red flag. And you should go look for another program and look for something else to do because you're doing your child a favor. You want them to come out, as you said, happy that they got better, happy. They didn't care how many games they won. They didn't care what their record was. They didn't care that's the essence of sports. That's the essence of being say, a skateboarder or a snowboarder. Now, and the essence of fun is such a powerful, powerful training tool for me as a coach. If I don't make it fun, I'm not going to get their attention. I'm not going to get their awareness on different things will fall off because they're not having fun. They get bored, and I get bored if I'm not having
Yeah,
fun too.
right.
So I've worked with a lot of athletes. I interviewed and I spent time with Shaun White, who's obviously one of the all-time best snowboarders and skateboarders in the world. And I said, "What's the secret sauce?" I see you up there on the top of a half pipe and during the Olympics, and you're behind. You gotta hit this trick, these series of tricks perfectly in order to win the gold medal. And you're up there and you're joking, you're laughing. And I'm like, what the heck is he doing?
Yeah.
And I asked him, I'm like, what is going through your mind when you're saying that? And he starts laughing. He goes, man, it's having fun. Because if I'm not having fun, I'll never nail that trick. I just want that rush of nailing that trick. But if I know if I do it, it's so much fun. And as I'm doing it, I'm thinking, this is a blast.
And look how successful. I mean, that worked, right?
Yeah, I know. And I think they get that from each other. They're not getting that from a professional coach necessarily. They're getting it because they understand as they work with their friends and stuff, let's go have fun.
Yeah. And I think that's important as teammates, right? Not to cut you off, but like if they're too competitive, I think you mentioned this before, it's like you guys are on the same team. You should be building each other up. You should be wanting your buddy to do just as well or better than you because it's going to benefit the whole team. And
you take your weakest link and you work with them.
Yeah.
And they actually inherently know how to do it. It's just encouraging them to do it and to get their egos out of the way.
Right.
And we know where egos go, especially as you get into adulthood, they get pretty ugly. So how do you eliminate that at an early age so that you can have a productive future as well as a teammate and as you advance in your professional career? So all this is interconnected. Is there one roadmap that gives you all the answers and gives you the straightest line? Is there a Waze app for youth sports and parents? Unfortunately not. You just got to be very flexible and have to be aware of what's going on and talk and communicate, but do it in a way that's not going to offend your child. It's going to make them defensive. And there's nothing worse than getting them defensive than you've lost them. And the same thing with coaching. You've got to there's an art to it. And you as a parent probably know it. And I would encourage all parents to use it to listen. Kids hate it when you don't listen. And if you listen and then quietly adapt to what they said, they're going to champion what you say because they're going to understand that you understand. So that's what I found to be pretty important.
What do you think is a good thing to say to your child at the end? Let's say we all know what to say when everything goes well. They shine brightly during their game and everything goes great. But how about we've all been there where we're driving home and that game did not go well. The team did not play together well. Your kid maybe made a bunch of errors. What do you say? Sometimes it's tough. Like I try to ask them what they got out of it or how they felt. But as a coach, what should we ask them to make it productive and make it a growth experience?
Well, think of the situation, okay? They themselves are living in their own world of I failed or I disappointed or I'm unhappy. The last thing they want to do is talk about it a lot of times, right? Sometimes taking time off to not even speak about it, just let it go a little bit is, I think, works wonders. Yeah, you address it at some point when it's appropriate, when the emotions have come down. It's just like warming down from an athletic event. You don't go pack right out and sprint, right? You slowly warm down. And same with the mind, the same psychologically. You don't want to hit them over the head with it. And it's almost like a nightmare. They keep why are you asking me this?
Just let them decompress, get them some food and let them decompress. Yeah.
Yeah. And let them because I guarantee you within an hour or two, they don't care. They don't care. They're on to something else.
Yeah.
And they're on their phones, they're texting, they want to know what they're doing, later that day or whatever it is. They're trying, they're on to something else. I think you hit sort of the nail on the head of this one too. You as a parent are concerned and may have taken it too seriously. And you want to know, we want answers. And they're looking at you like, why do you want answers? I mean, I just went through this experience. Mom. Yeah. And so you got to think how they're thinking,
Yeah.
and that they don't really want to talk about it, then they shouldn't have to talk about it.
Right.
And then when it's right, and then they have a good coach, the coach will say, okay, let's break down what happened the other day. Here are all the good things that happened today. Let's celebrate that. Let's get into it and do it like a day after, or a few days after a practice. And then slowly work in the things that they need to work on, but don't dwell on it. Don't feature them as mistakes.
Right.
Even though you should celebrate them, I think that's more of an overall philosophy of celebrating everything that you do, right and wrong, and to make the experience a whole one.
That's great. I think that's actually really helpful. I will be thinking of that advice next time I'm in the car after one of those games.
I don't mean to criticize you. I mean,
No,
that's
not
the
at
case with every
all.
parent.
Not at all. I mean,
Every parent's guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. I was
just
guilty
don't
of it
know
too. So,
sometimes. Like, oh, what
yeah,
do I say? What do I? So maybe you just say
yeah,
nothing. It
yeah.
makes sense. It makes sense.
Sometimes we take it too personally as a
Right.
parent.
Right.
A competition becomes against the other parents. Like, you see the sidelines, how they become like,
Hmm.
button heads, and
Yep.
people want more. It doesn't have to be that way, and it shouldn't be. And cooler heads should prevail. And you should just put it into perspective of where you are and what you're doing. So,
It's just a game, right?
yeah. Hmm.
So I'm just curious. I know you were involved with as the what I don't know the exact title, the youth director for the NFL. Is that what you did for
Yeah.
15,
I was the head of
16 years?
youth football development and football development at the NFL. Yes.
So do you have a few takeaways? Because my son is heavily involved in football. I mean, he loves it. And I know that,
Mhm.
we will be playing this sport for a long time in our house. And it's a great sport. It's a lot of fun. And he loves everything about it. Playing, watching, he pushes himself in the off season to get better and get faster. And he really does. He's reading books. So it's awesome. It's wonderful. It's intense. So I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on youth football and the intensity?
Well, I was in the belly of the beast, as they say, at the NFL as heading up. I was brought on to change the way youth football was sort of presented, introduced, and developed. It needed some changes. Not nobody was playing. The numbers are very, very low when I started there. I was coming from the soccer world. That's why they brought me in. And I started to make changes. And they were basically what you see and beyond winning. You had to change the culture of it, because the culture of football, we talk about all the bad things in sports. The culture of football has all of them. I'm sorry. A coach in football is portrayed as being this drill sergeant who yells and screams and wants them to do things that are physically sometimes inappropriate for children. So it depends upon the age too. So I was a big proponent, and I had the great pleasure, and I was blessed to have a mentor in Bill Walsh, who had won 3 Super Bowls with the San Francisco 49ers, coached at Stanford, really a highly intellectual person who really understood athletic development and child development. And he and I would sit for hours coming up with so-called solutions of what we could do, what could be done differently. And I would just bounce ideas off of him, and he would correct me or approve of things. And then he'd ask me as many questions as I asked him. So we came up with programs that were, what were essentially the issues? Contact football, too many injuries, too many head injuries, that's why moms weren't allowing their kids to play. But I was the head of youth football. I had to increase the participation. That was part of my job. If I didn't increase participation, then I wasn't going to have a job. Right. So I had to come up with a way to do it without offending everybody in the traditional world of football. And believe me, I sat in these club meetings, these owner meetings and general manager meetings and NFL coaches meeting, where I had to present things that were different. And talk about scary.
Yeah.
Talk about these guys like looking,
Intimidating.
looking at you like, what are you talking about? And I had plenty of those situations, but I also had a fair amount of those owners and coaches and GMs say, you know what, if we don't do it your way, we're going to lose the sport and we'll have nobody to coach anymore. And so we have to be more open to this. So I had to come up with an alternative to tackle football, basically in a way as a bridge to get kids involved and then get them eventually to tackle football. I didn't invent flag football. I didn't invent touch football, 2-hand touch. But what I did do is I sort of glorified NFL flag football. I created NFL flag, and every kid got to play for their favorite NFL teams. And we had reversible uniforms and flags, and we built that up, and we put different things into it that you see now in Beyond Winning, and in where coaches were not allowed on the sidelines. You coached them in practice, but you couldn't come to the game and sit on the sideline and coach them. Kids coached themselves, and kids loved it. Parents and coaches hated it, but I knew I was on to something when that happened. We did a whole national
Yes.
championship where I pulled the coaches off the sidelines, and they went berserk. I didn't care. I'm like, you're here on the national championship. This is the way we're going to do it. And we had one of the best national championships ever. It was fun. And I think that type of thing changed the sort of the culture of how parents looked at football, and it started to have an effect. Then I started to work on tackle football, and how can I make tackle football safer, more open to everybody? And I looked at it, and it was just common sense. It was like, why do you look at the big kid that might be overweight and say your alignment? And then you pigeonhole him at that position. You've now labeled him alignment, okay, or a center or whatever. So that was one thing. The other thing is, who is not to say that those kids should be determining where they play, not you, because they know what's going to keep them in the game. They know what they enjoy, right? So why don't we introduce them to every single position on the field and teach them every single position on the field? So I had a whole season where I would go in, and we did this all across the country. And we provided all the equipment, which is a big task. It was a lot of money, but the NFL had that type of money. We would put them in uniforms and helmets and pads, and we would have a season of practices. We didn't play one game.
Wow.
We didn't play one game. But what we did is we had competitions at the end of every practice, or in the middle of practice, at the end of every practice. And we'd split them we have 150 kids on a field. 75 would learn a defensive position. 75 would learn an offensive position. And then when we bring them together, and they compete one-on-one and in small groups. And then we'd have scores. And we just tally them through the 12 weeks that we were with them 3 times a week. And it was manageable. And at the same time, we were teaching coaches at the same time how to coach the game, how to coach the fundamentals of the game, and how to break it down into simple competition. Not, you don't have to have 4 downs and first downs and punting and kickoffs and all the things that we knew were trouble for young kids. We took that out, and we started to teach the game rather than having go scrimmage. And there was a top college coach who told me one day, he goes, if you can't coach, scrimmage, because it's so true. You see coaches scrimmage when they're not bringing anything to the practice. They don't have anything prepared. They don't know how to coach. So let's play. And kids love that. Yeah, let's play. Of course. But if you don't know how to play and you're not getting any better, how long is that going to work?
Right.
So then the other thing for moms is that I took a group of moms and taught them to become tackle football coaches. And
I love it.
In order to be able to get moms to understand that this game is for everybody, you as a mom could be as much a part of it as your husband who sits at home and on Sunday afternoons, and that's all he focuses on. But you could do the same thing, or you could do it with him, or you could do it with your kids. And you know what? And as I said, and I truly believe females make the best coaches because they ask questions and they get answers. Whereas men, they never ask questions. Again, I'm painting with a broad brush, but that's the wonders of being a mom and a female. You know how to sort of manage your way with kids. Well, that's a great coaching tool. And so I took advantage of that, and we had a lot of success with that as well. So that's sort of what I did at the NFL. And there's a lot of offshoots of that and that sort of thing. But yeah, it was fun, but it was a political animal to try to wrestle.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
And to get it get done. But today, flag football is flourishing, I'm happy to say. And it's something that I'm fairly proud of. And I think more sports should look at readapting their sport, the readaptation of sports. Again, don't play adult games, play games that kids can learn from and have fun from. And you still bring in that excitement of a sport that they see on TV if you create it for them, but it doesn't have to be done. It's so officially, like, we all want to do through leagues and tournaments.
Right. Yeah. That creative piece and not having everything, like you said, sometimes you'd get these these older kids and they really can't even think for themselves anymore because everything has been so structured their whole life.
Hmm.
Everything is adult run, right? And
Yes.
learning to think, I mean, what you did with the NFL, with the flag football, I mean, you were really thinking outside the box. You were being really creative. You were honing those fundamental skills. And that's amazing. That's important. And it's fun, like you said. And that's what we want to teach our kids to be able to do. And like you said, to adapt and think outside the box, I think is just a skill that will take everybody so far. So
Yeah, being aware of what's going on
yeah.
in society and what's going on in the sports world. That's what I do when I was in that position with at US soccer, at the NFL, and when I did a lot of consulting work, is that you have to take in the entire culture, what's happening. And that's
Mhm.
what introduced me to action sports and say, why can't we borrow from what they're doing? They're having a lot of fun. They're doing a lot of different things. Why can't I take little bits and pieces and adapt that and place that into programs of, say, traditional, which that whole word traditional sort of ruins the whole the sports experience, but especially for kids. But that's how you have to go about it in order to come up with some creative ways to make that happen. And creativity has been so lost in sports today. We
Mhm.
read a whole, there's chapters I've written on that type of stuff. It's time to really encourage creativity or develop a team of self coaches as we did when we do with flag football. There's so much benefit. There's so many benefits to that. There's so much learning that goes on. There's so much learning as a coach. You're not necessarily not coaching. You're just learning from what you see them doing. And then you take it and you adapt it and incorporate it into your coaching. It's just be able to leave your ego at the door so that you can go do those sort of things. And you're not on TV, coach. You're not the one.
Right.
You're not,
Right.
you're there as a teacher. And I think a lot of coaches forget that.
Let the kids shine. Let the kids get as much out of it as they can.
Yeah.
So interesting, Scott. I feel like there's just so much on this topic. Maybe as we wrap up today, what do you think about leaving us with some words of encouragement, maybe to the youth athletes out there listening, and then also to the parents of those kids?
Okay. For youth athletes, I would say do what you love. All right. If you don't like it, you don't love it. That's a big warning sign. There's something out there that you will find that you do love. Now, yes, find something that you're good at and then really focus on it and really work on the fundamentals of that. And you will see success. As I tell as a speed coach, I had tremendous success getting kids and athletes to become much faster than they were, and it's just simple. It's working on the basics and understanding and becoming more aware of your body and that sort of thing. So anybody can get better. That's what, so don't ever get into a rut saying, I'm not worth it or I
Mhm.
can't do this. You can do it. And it's just finding your way through it and having the confidence to do that and getting in front of the right coach to make that happen, or do it yourself or just experiment. I mean, experimentation, I encourage it. I think that's one of the biggest things you can do. Get outside and work with your friends, have fun with your friends, and just enjoy it. For parents, I would say, don't take it so seriously. Almost the same type of advice.
Mhm.
Don't take it so seriously. If it's overwhelming, there's a reason why you're feeling overwhelming. You're probably doing too much. Try to figure out ways to cut back on that. And maybe the pandemic, we didn't even talk about that and the effects on sports.
Right.
But the pandemic sort of showed that if spending time with your family is actually fun, and actually it's something you can really enjoy. And I think people learned that that's what they were missing.
Mm.
And why not go back to that to some extent? Make it less serious, make it more of accomplishment based and enjoyable based sort of experiences rather than, we're going to this tournament to try to win it. No, you should be going there to try to learn something, or go on vacations where you're learning something new. Introduce your kids to something new. Take them skiing if they don't ski. Take them surfing if they don't surf. Do things that are different, and things that they find fun and you find fun that you can do together. I think that sort of opens your mind. It's almost a source of meditation. You could
Mm.
do something and forget about everything else. Now you'll be surprised how your mind opens up to new opportunities and new things that you could do as a family and with your kids one-on-one or as a group or what have you. I think it's the only way to get through this mess that we have in
Mhm.
society is
Yeah.
to sort of just clear your mind and don't think too much about it, but just enjoy it. So
Great advice. And that's really getting back to the fundamentals of family, finding
Yes.
things to do together. And that, in my opinion, is the heart of it all and should be, step one. That should be the priority. And then everything else kind of builds around it, right? Let that be the core.
Yeah. I mean, the number one reason why kids get involved in sports is because their friends play.
Hmm.
They want to be around them. They want to do things with them. Okay. If you take that away from them, that's a big takeaway that they don't enjoy. So as long as you know that, and they just want to hang out,
Yeah.
and sports happens to be what they do to hang out, and that's pretty healthy, which you can oversee it and make sure it remains healthy. So
Right. Right. Wow, Scott, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. And for everybody listening, I'm going to put a lot of links in the show notes here to his book Beyond Winning that we were talking about, and his other books, and his websites and everything like that, because there's a lot of good stuff. And I think what you're doing is so important, Scott, and so valuable. And I really can't thank you enough for your
well, thank you.
contribution.
Thank you for having me on and being able to talk about this, because I think it's important for everybody to at least think about it,
Yes.
come up with alternatives.
Yep. Yep. Think about, and I think what you said earlier about going with your gut, listen to your intuition and follow that. Let that lead you and just have some fun.
Listen to your kids and listen to yourself.
Hmm.
It goes a long way.
It sure does.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode and have been inspired to slow down and start living life at your own pace. As a brand new podcast, your listener voice matters. If Let's Slow Down is resonating with you, please take a minute to leave a review and rate us. Subscribe to the show wherever you listen and share it with friends. Remember, this is a process, so go easy on yourself. Be gentle and take all the space you need to thrive, because the world needs you to be at your best, to love and serve others and yourself.